Okay, we've been sent a very, very interesting case here. This is a cerec guide case for tooth number 13 and a cerec guide for tooth number 30, and somehow we've managed to get them both in the scan. I have some concerns about this case. One, there is a lot of scatter in the scan. There seems to be that there may be some movement even in the scan. And it just concerns me a little bit. Now, why would that concern me? One, couple of reasons. One is in tight implant placements, we have very little room for error, so we need to have a very accurate scan and a very accurate guide. And the second reason is cerec guide, while it works and works very well, it does have a greater margin of error than a Opti guide or a classic guide from CCAT, in the sense that there are many moving parts and pieces to the guide. So with that in mind, let's move forward and let's start with tooth number 30. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and duplicate my plan so we can have a comparison. And in this video, part one, we'll go ahead and look at number 30. And to do number 30, let's start with the implant plan as if we're not doing cerec guide. And I can't rely on the opposing data because there are teeth and there are things in the way there. So we're going to use this, and we can see we're pretty close to being flat. For some reason, something in me wants to do this with the implant a little bit, just tilt it, and that actually looks a little bit better. Get it centered a little bit there using the surgical sleeve, and then everything else looks straightforward. Again, um, we have to be concerned about the nerve. We are really close to the nerve here. If I were doing this with cerec guide, I would not be comfortable with this length of an implant, simply because there are many things that can go wrong with cerec guide. Number one is we're arbitrarily setting our own D2 value. We may go too deep. We don't really have any depth control from that sense. And again, with the guide, there is some margin of error. So personally, I would, in this particular case, if I were going with the Opti guide, I would probably be relatively comfortable with this. I think our nerve mapping is off here. I think the nerve is actually right there. But nonetheless, we got the right area. But we need to remember that even with the Opti guide, we're going to expect about 1 millimeter longer drills. And I just think we're too close to the nerve here. I would not be very comfortable with this. So in this particular case, I would go ahead and drop back to a 8 millimeter length implant. And obviously that's going to affect our D2 value, as we're seeing here. That's what I would look at here. I just don't like being that close to the nerve, for good reason, obviously. The next thing we need to look at is doing the cerec guide and bringing the guide in place. So to do that, we have to register the data. One of the issues with doing multiple implants, multiple cerec guides at the same time, certainly on opposing arches, is knowing which ones are, like, is that T for this one or is that T for this one? I mean, we can know, but we've got to make sure that we don't mess it up. So here, what we'll do on sleeve, instead of having implant direct guided surgery, we'll go to Sirona cerec, click OK, and then we'll go to reference body. And now what it's asking us to do is to point out the spherical radiographic markers. So I'll double click on those. Got that one. Double click. And we need 3 reference points for cerec guide, and double click. So now it's detecting the reference body, and hopefully it will put all this together. I think there's some movement in the scan, so there may be a chance that it's incorrect, but it looks like it's okay. Verify the type, it's there. So now we'll move forward. So now we have to go back and set our D2 value, and here we can see the reference body was placed in there very nicely. Our D2 value will need to come up to at least the height of that T-bar right there. So in this case, we're going to set our D2 right now. It's set at 8 millimeters. So on an 8 millimeter implant, let's say that ideally I would want to set this at 18 millimeters, 10 millimeters above, but 18 is not going to get me nearly close enough to getting above that. So in this case, we're going to have to probably go to, like, say 25. And now 25 is too long, of course. So maybe we'll be able to back down to 22. And 22 is going to be good enough to get us above. We could possibly even go to 20. 20 is cutting it close, so in this case, I don't like to cut it close, so I'll just go to 21. And 21 will get us there. So now the height from the top of our key to this is 21. That's our length there. So now from this point, we're ready to, this cerec guide is done. And looking at it, we can see that, we're within the realm here. The software will mill this at an angle and get it done. So then when we're ready to move forward, we go to surgery, guide, and we just export the plan. It'll save it, and then we'll open it in cerec and mill a cerec guide unit out. Next, let's move to implant on site number 12. And here we can see that the implant has been planned where the bone is, but the restoration does not seat too well with that. So let's again start with getting the implant in the right spot. So the first thing I would do is try to get in close to the central groove as possible. We see that too much of the implant is out there. So I'm just going to tilt and move and get the implant until I can get it pretty close to being in the central groove, and keeping some distance between the various vital structures here. And this is an implant, 3.7 by 8 millimeters. It's a relatively short implant. Tilt it, move it back in place here. Okay, so now we've managed to get this to a position where we can restore it nicely and maintain bone. There is some chance, again, depending on the softness of the bone, how much we can expand this socket, the osteotomy, how thin this will be. Right there, will we have some show through? If anything, we could cheat a little bit here, like so, and know that our implant will be slightly off angle. Instead of coming through the central groove, we'll be coming up the buccal incline, which isn't the end of the world. Maybe we could cheat back a little bit here. Again, this part of the implant is not in bone. Again, it's on the palatal. That's very thick connective tissue here. I would probably lay a flap in this to preserve that keratinized tissue versus punching it. I'm pretty comfortable with this implant placement. It's not perfect, but I think it certainly will do for this particular case. So the next step is to mark our reference body. So I click the R button here. And there's our first spherical ball. There's another one, and there's another one. So it's detecting the reference body. It has put everything together. And now we can take a look, and the guide was put in very nicely. The bigger question will be is how long is this going to have to be from the head of the implant to get our D2 value correct. And again, let's go ahead and start at 21 like we did with the other tooth. And 21 is likely to work in this particular case. So hopefully this is very helpful in getting how we need to go here. Thank you.